Talktainment Radio Worldwide Sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. Oh, the world's greatest radio. Oh, my goodness. We're here with Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller is the author of two definitive, that's the term we like to use here because it does define a lot of things that go on the planet. His first major work is titled The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism or white supremacy. And that has gone on to become a classic. And for many years, I remember way back, I first met Mr. Fuller, I think way back in 1975. And Mr. Fuller came to town to do a lecture. And we packed the place. And I just packed the place on word of mouth at that time. Because people said, I want to hear somebody talk about that. And we had scheduled, I think, a 2-hour or something like that thing. And it wound up almost being all day. Do you remember that, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, I remember that.
And we wound up. And then one time, I think the last time I brought you here, we had you at OSU. And we were wondering if anybody was going to show up after we did the radio show. And we had people outside the whole time. Bunches of them couldn't get in. We almost had to put a loudspeaker out there so that the room was packed. We had standing room, people in the hallways. It was just amazing. And I'm sure you remember that one. I think that was, when was that, Mr. Fuller? About 7 or 8 years ago, maybe?
Yes, sir. Somewhere. Maybe about 10.
About 10, yeah. But those we've had a lot of things to look at. But this book is truly, I guess that I have to use the word a must read, but more importantly, I would say classic. Classic in the sense that it's foundational. You have to get that. You have to, because that helps frame how you see the world, and then you can test it. You know, if you say that, I don't believe none of what's in that book. Okay. Then what you do is, like Mr. Fuller will tell you this, you go and you test it for its own validity. Mr. Fuller, how are you doing, sir?
I'm still learning.
After all these years, we're still learning. Yes, sir. Yes, we are. Okay, Mr. Fuller, a lot of stuff going on all the time. Any thoughts you have before we get smack dab into some things that I want to get into, and then I'd like for you to tell me at the in the last part of the show what it is that you want to talk about, Mr. Fuller.
Well, I'll just start by saying what's in the news currently. Mm-hmm. And what's in the news currently is the Boko Haram, I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah, Boko Haram.
Kidnappings. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also the Donald Sterling controversy.
Right.
And also the Michael Sam.
Right.
Controversy.
And let me say this real quick about Michael Sam. I've got to give you kudos. Once again, you had said that at some point, homosexuality will become black-faced. You had said that. I remember when you said it. And sure enough, I woke up Sunday morning. When was it? Sunday? I think it was Sunday. Turned on TV, and there it was. Smack dab in your face. They're kissing and hugging over and over, slobbing. I'm thinking, what in the world's going on? So I'll go ahead and give you a chance let's start with the Sam. then we'll go to the Sterling, then we'll go to Boko. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, go ahead. And then I've got callers waiting. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I put them all together because the white supremacists now, I always blame whatever is happening to the non-white people on the planet. The white supremacists are behind it if it's anything of any major impact. And so this is not to impugn the people, the individual non-white people who are involved, because it is what it is. But the white supremacists always steer whatever it is that non-white people are doing or not doing. They are going, their job, their mission. I'm not talking about all white people, but those white people who are the most powerful and the smartest people on the planet, who believe in the system of white supremacy, which means dominating and mistreating people based on color. They look at whatever it is that non-white people are doing or not doing, and then they make their moves to determine what they are going to be doing. And this is what white supremacy means. You look at non-white people, first of all, categorizing them by color so that you can dominate them and mistreat them for fun, glory, and whatever material profit you need out of that or you want out of that. And then you codify what you're going to have them doing under your guidance. And you do this in all 9 areas of activity if you're going to be an efficient racist. That's economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. So you look at the non-white people of the entire planet and you say, now, what am I going to have them doing next year or the year after that or 15 or 20 or 30 years down the road or a couple of 100 years down the road? They make long-range plans for the non-white people of the entire planet. That's what the system of white supremacy does. It's the most efficient and most prominent system of government that the world has ever known, so that they have actually abolished all other governments. All other governments are just words. They're just terms. You'll say the government of this and the government of that and the government of Nigeria and all like that. None of these governments really exist in the system of white supremacy. It's just one world government. And you can call it a world government if you want to put a polite term on it, but the specific term is the system of white supremacy in all 9 areas of activity, and it dominates all of the non-white people on the planet. People classified as black, brown, red, yellow, beige, tan, whatever. So what they have done recently and what they are doing, according to what I have observed, they have said that, okay, in the Boko Haram kidnappings, the kidnappings in Nigeria, now they are very shrewd. They are playing both sides, in my opinion. And this is just my opinion. It can be checked and found out whether or not this is true or false, because it's going to fall in one of 2 categories, either true or false. That's in everything in counter-racist science. If you're going to be effective against racism, you have to categorize everything that you're going to say. If you're going to say something, you try to make it true, because if you make any mistakes, it's just like putting a garment together. One mistake can ruin the whole garment. I mean, if you have one thread that's loose, because the system of white supremacy is a system, very well put together. It's a well-oiled machine. So I have looked at this kidnapping thing and looked at it from what I call counter-racist scientific, using the scientific approaches, the codified approach, counter-racist code. And it appears that they are playing both sides. In other words, they put up some people to do a kidnapping. The white supremacists are behind this, and that's the way I look at it. And then they put up some people to say, let's go get them. Now, this is to do what? What the white supremacists do best, cause confusion. But see, it's all non-white people who are going to get hurt on both sides. Both the non-white people who have been bribed or conned or propagandized into making the kidnapping. Mm-hmm. See, the white supremacists get behind that and then give them all the arms and money and whatnot and the technical ability to do all of the magic tricks that it takes to kidnap people and disappear, with the whole world looking for them now and can't find them, but they know about them. That should throw suspicion right there. You can't find these fellas, and they're supposed to be primitive and backward. They're not super sophisticated. What do you mean? I mean, the ladies were taken, and they say, well, the jungle is too thick. Oh, they can find a net. The white supremacists are super sophisticated. They can find an alligator tooth. I don't care where you put it, if they really want to. You have to assume that. They're the most competent people on the planet. But, these boogeymen have appeared from nowhere, like from the planet Mars, with all these AK-47s, shiny boots, uniforms, the whole 9 yards.
Expensive Jeeps or whatever.
Yes, I mean, you got armored vehicles that need all kinds of maintenance.
That's right.
And whatnot.
And gas.
Now they have disappeared, as if they have gone to another planet. Okay? This is cause for suspicion right there. Then the good old boys say, let's saddle up and go get them. Okay? Because they love that. They love the chase. Okay? And they'll probably get them. The ladies will probably be rescued, or, depending on what the scenario is laid out to be, they'll find them dead. And this is to incite more anger and all like that. And then they'll say, well, we got to stay in this area because, we got to wipe them out now because these people are wholesale murderers and whatnot. And so we got to hang around here. Now, that hanging around is for the ultimate purpose that they have in mind altogether. See what I mean? It's something that the white supremacists want to do in this area that has nothing to do with the kidnapping. You have to come to that conclusion. Because since when have white supremacists been concerned about the destruction of black vaginas and black wombs in the persons of black females? And all of a sudden, all of these crocodile tears coming from the white supremacists of this planet? I don't think so. So that covers that part. The other thing they have going is this Don Sterling thing and making him the focal point in order to get the heat off of all the other millions of white supremacists on the planet. Well, now he's supposed to be included as a racist suspect anyway. That's a given. According to counter-racist science, in a system of white supremacy, any white person who is able, underline able, to be a white supremacist probably is one. Sorry about that. I didn't set it up. But this is the only course that a person who is going to be reasonable should take, according to counter-racist science. If you're going to be against racism, you have to make that assumption. Now, that's a harsh assumption, but not within the context of the harsh reality of racism. Racism is harsh itself. So you have to take a harsh approach against something as gigantic as the system of white supremacy. So I'm going to repeat that again. Any white person walking the face of this planet who is able to be, has to be able to be it now, able to be a white supremacist, probably is one. That's a dynamite statement, but I stick by it. Why? Based on emotion? Based on some type of hatred? Based on what, Fuller? Based on logic. You're in a system of white supremacy, the only government on the planet. Somebody has to be a racist. But since you don't have a master list, I don't have one, of who is or even who to suspect of being a racist. right now there are black people who are confused about whether they can call Mr. Sterling a racist or not. Why? Because there's no even cogent definition of when do you reach the plateau of being actually identified as a racist. I mean, what are the qualifications? Nobody specifies this. It's all some type of ghost term. Oh, is he a racist? Well, maybe he's a racist. Well, he sounds like a racist. Well, on the other hand, maybe he's not a racist. Well, ask his girlfriend. Do you think he's a racist? Well, he could be. On some days, he might be. Well, I mean, I don't think that he really is. But in his heart, that he, not really, and not in his heart. Maybe in some of his actions it could be. Well, now, let's see. Let's look at this from another angle. Now, if he's a racist, would he hire all those black people and whatnot like he says? I mean, come on. I mean, just go around calling people racist and whatnot. You got to be careful of that, and all like that. Ask Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, are you a racist? Oh, no, I don't think of myself as a racist. Well, what do the people out there say? Well, some of them say that you are. Some of them say that you're not. Well, ask some of the black people. What do they think? Well, he ain't no different from a whole lot of other white people I know. I mean, but on the other hand, I mean, he shouldn't be saying those things. Maybe the man is just sick, but is he a racist? That's the question. Is the man a racist? Well, could be. He was a racist when he said what he said, but maybe today, now that he's, having second thoughts, maybe he ain't no racist, or maybe he's part-time racist, and when is this? Or when is the part-time? And back and forth and forth and back. That's what we have. Now, the white supremacists love it. I mean, collectively. Because they have what? Where their strength is, confusion. Confusion about the kidnappings in Nigeria, confusion about Mr. Donald Sterling, and now you have one of their favorites now in this modern age, confusion about sexuality, because they are going all out to degenderize the black males of this planet and the black females of this planet, and collectively all the non-white people of this planet as best they possibly can. Why? Because it's good for the business of white supremacy. If you can confuse people sexually, you got them in all the other areas of activity. It's a clean sweep. So it's not to disparage. I want to emphasize this. The black people, we have them all in, among of our social circles, our friends, our family members, and whatnot. Homosexuality or so-called gay sex has been around like forever. All right? And what the white supremacists are doing with it so that black people don't get confused. Because when I make these remarks, many black people say, oh, what is Fuller doing? He's, I mean, I know some nice people, who are gay and whatnot. I mean, it was a gay guy that got me through school and whatnot, one of my professors. I mean, he was the best teacher in the school. I mean, helped me with all of my work and whatnot and all like that, and never made no passes with me or nothing like that. He's just a good teacher. So come on, what is all this about? It's not what it's about as far as just being gay or transgender or whatever you want to call it. It's about what the white supremacist plan is. I want to emphasize this, worldwide. And they are working full time to just grab whatever black person they can get and putting them up front as the poster child for a plan that they have, not for the plan that the individual gay person has. Each and every so-called gay person, or transgender person, or bisexual have their own plans, but the white supremacists got a plan for them. And people have to understand that. Otherwise, you're losing a great part of understanding how racism works.
That's deep. All right, let's take some callers. Let's go with my first caller. Caller, you on the air? Go ahead.
Yes, yes, sir, brothers.
Well, one speak, and the other hold, and then I'll go to the other one. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Ambassador AM, and I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Really quickly, I just want to thank you, brothers, for what you all are doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you all are doing is important, it's powerful, and it's needed. You know, it is timely and it is very needed. And I'm committed to making sure that, you know, as many people as I can get listen to you all's show and read you all's books.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I wanted to ask, let me briefly say this. I am a proud dropout of one of the top schools, doctoral schools in Western Massachusetts, New England. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they're really pushing is degenderization. There is literally no focus on academics right now. The major focus is on rights for gays, and all aid and assistance, you know, coming for black people will be in the form of, you know, help through, you know, like these programs that help students that consider themselves, you know, one of these, you know, categories of homosexuality. And with the research and the things that I've done, I've come to find that education for black people, you know, the education that black students receive under this system will produce either three things: entertainers, people who are playing ball, dancing, and singing and doing those type of things; prison population people who, you know, who just won't be able to contribute anything other than, you know, labor in some sort of prison type confine. And the third will be tools, people who, you know, who they use for their minds to produce, to manufacture, to create, but their thinking will be that of, you know, the racist white supremacists. And I have studied it. I titled my dissertation "Countering the Socio and Economic Factors That Hinder the African Student, K through 5 with African and African American History as a Tool of Empowerment." And by the time it was taken apart and destroyed, it wouldn't have any legs, and so I decided to leave the program.
Wow. Do you have a question for Mr. Fuller?
Really quickly, Mr. Fuller, I wanted to ask you about Dr. Francis Quest Westling.
Welsing
to your 9 areas. Dr.
Right.
Francis Quest Westling.
Yes.
Welsing.
Yes.
Welsing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Her addition to your 9 areas of activity, and that addition being health. What do you think about adding health to your 9 areas?
Mr.
Well,
Fuller?
a lot of people have asked me about that down through the years. I didn't add health. I mean, because that suggestion was made some years ago by a number of people. I didn't add health because I simply said that if you have everything the way it should be, a quality interaction, quality relationships, I call it. If you have that, quality relationships between people and quality relationship with things in the 9 areas of activity, you will have health. Now, what I mean by quality economics, quality education, quality entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, you will automatically have the health that you're seeking. If you get everything the way it should be in all of those 9 areas, in economics, in education, if your education is a healthy education, heading toward doing the things that are correct rather than the things that are not correct, because every move that you make on the planet is either going to be constructive or non-constructive. So if you have constructive activity in the use of time and energy, which is what economics is described as being in the Word Guide, the Counter-Racist Word Guide, one of the books that I have, if you have constructive activity in the field of economics, you have health in the field of economics. Same in education. You don't teach anything that's not going to have a constructive value. Also in entertainment, You just look at the way people entertain themselves. I mean, if people say, well, let's have a party. Let's go partying tonight. Okay. Is this partying going to be constructive or non-constructive? In many cases, it's very toxic among non-white people, particularly in the Northwestern Hemisphere, because we have been taught to have, systematically taught to have parties that are toxic. Now, what do I mean by toxic? I mean things happen in many, many, many so-called partying situations, a form of entertainment that we all enjoy. But traditionally, over the years, many of these forms of entertainment that we have are non-constructive. Why? Where's the evidence? The yellow tape fluttering in the wind at 3 o'clock in the morning, with law enforcement radios crackling in cars with the doors open, and 2 or 3 bodies lying in the street, and one on the porch, and maybe a couple in the house where they're having the party. Now, this happens over and over and over and over again. Now, is this the nomenclature for a party? I mean, but too often, this is the result. People go to parties to have what they call a good time, and then the good time turns out to be a whole bunch of regrets. So maybe we need to examine every facet of what we call a party. I mean, it's not just the balloons. Let's just look at, what we eat, what we drink at a so-called party, and the conversation that goes on at a so-called party, and all of the activities. Let's just make a list of the ingredients that goes into a typical black party. All right? I mean, a real serious, typical black party, where it's going to be maybe 4 or 5 dozen people, or, a couple of hundred people maybe. Just let's examine it in detail and see how much of it is actually constructive and how much is non-constructive, and be honest about it. See? And what am I talking about? I'm talking about health, just in one area of activity, how we entertain ourselves, including how we talk to each other at a party, and what we think is funny if somebody starts making jokes, all right, and how it all winds up, because too many of them wind up with the pop, 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 pop of 9mm pistols. And sometimes it attracts people who have another agenda that's not healthy.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, we're running up against the clock here.
Yes.
Let me go to the other caller. Caller, you can stay on the line, the one that just had a comment, but let me bring in the other caller. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, sir. I just want to start off by saying that it's an honor to call in and talk to Mr. Fuller. I'm kind of nervous, so hopefully I can get my point across.
Okay, good.
And make sense.
All right.
I've been listening on YouTube for a couple of years now or whatnot, and just my background, I was fished by Malcolm X and Khalid Muhammad from the grave, through their YouTube lectures and speeches. And, with Dr. Amos Wilson and Kwame Ture, Steve Coakley, Dr. Barbara Shango, Francis Cress Welsing, and many others, I feel that Neely Fuller Jr. Has the most logical voice right now, in my opinion. With that said, I would like to ask him, does he feel that, as I may feel myself, that this whole Boko Haram situation is like the new CIA Al-Qaeda operative thing that they did in the early, late 90s, early 2000s. And now they're just putting a black face on it and still got to put a turban or a headband on because that scares white folks or whatnot. Just a new reason to exploit black people, as if I remember correctly from last week's call-in show for oil.
Right. He does look like a character from Central Casting. I mean,
I peeped it. I was looking on Yahoo Images. He has a fresh beard. I'm like, if you're in the jungle like that, along with the vehicles that he has, the AK-47, the uniforms are not ragged, unlike the brother Joseph Kony or whatever. When you seen him and his band out there about last year. They was giving a lot of.
I'll tell you what. I want you to hold on because I'm gonna give Mr. Fuller a chance to respond to that on the other side, and we've got some more issues we're gonna bring forward. Both of you stay right there. Mr. Fuller, you stay right there, and I want the audience to stay right there. This is the compensatory concept heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Stay right there. Have you ever wished you could spend more time with your kids, or maybe quality time with your spouse, when you can actually have an uninterrupted conversation? Do you owe your dad a little catch-up time? Well, it's time to reconnect, and no activity can bond a family together quite like boating and fishing. I mean, think of all the great experiences you had as a kid when you went boating or fishing. Well, guess what? It's still great. Boating and fishing are the perfect opportunities for your family to get away, to talk, to laugh, to create new memories. So take someone you love out on the water and see where the water takes you. If you haven't been on the water in a while and you're not sure where to start, or if you just like to have some helpful tips for your next trip, please visit TakeMeFishing.org. This has been a public service of TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
For information on everything from passports to driver's licenses to local weather, go to firstgov.gov. Firstgov.gov, the official source for federal, state, and local government information.
Years ago, identical twins were separated at birth. Chris Paul was destined for life with basketball. Cliff Paul was destined to become a State Farm agent. They shared one invaluable trait. They were both born to assist. Find an agent born to get you to a better state.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
You got the power.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard, the world's greatest radio. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week, well, mostly every week, with Mr. Fuller and the compensatory concept. You can get Mr. Fuller's works by going to www.producejustice.com. Let me repeat that, www.producejustice, that's one word, producejustice.com, and then follow the prompts from there. And then it tells you how to get his book, The Word Guide, and the other book, his classic or definitive work that set everything in motion, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, white supremacy by Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And, of course, he is here live. We go live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we have replays of this show, 3 p.m. today, Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. tonight, Eastern Standard Time. Or you can go and check him out 24/7 on the podcast. Podcasts are just simply rebroadcasts of shows that we have done or that you have missed. If you want to order them, you can call 1-877-932-9766. So we have many of them up there. And they're there for you to go and listen to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And but Mr. Fuller, if you want that book, want his two works, and I suggest you get them because I have them both. I suggest that you get them. You go to www.producejustice.com. Mr. Fuller, I want to have you to finish this, your response to what the young person was saying. And then I have something that came across my desk that I want to read to you and I want to get your response on, because it sounds like something that some word they use, they called it eugenics. Reminds me of Adolf Hitler. It's kind of slowly creeping into the mindset, but it's called eugenics. You would call it of course, you put it under the rubric of white supremacy, but I'm going to read it to you after you respond to the young man's question. Mr. Fuller.
Well, basically, he was making a series of statements which I agree with, so it just, but I point out that what people should do, and you have already said it earlier in the program, don't take and run with what Neely Fuller or anybody else says about anything in the news. Okay? Just take and run with it blankly. No. Check into it and notice things yourself. That's what I call counter-racist science. This is supposed to be a science. Racism is an exact science. It's the greatest political science that has ever appeared among the people of this planet in recorded history, as far as I know. Nothing has been greater than than that science of racism in the form of what we call white supremacy. Nothing. No political science has been greater than that. Has had the power and the staying power and the intricacies of that system. So therefore, nothing is greater than that. So you have to be very precise if you're going to eradicate it, and not just eradicate it, but under the law of compensation, which is what I use mostly, the compensatory concept, meaning you're going to take something away, because it does have some drive to it. I mean, it produces a lot of material things, but the problem with it is it throws away people who have dark skins, people of color. It's set up to do that. You produce a whole lot of material things, and you boost a whole bunch of people's egos who are classified as white, which is what it's supposed to be, a huge ego booster, but you throw away millions of people, many of them before they're even born in the process. So you want to, in a compensatory fashion, if you're going to replace this system with a better system, what would that system be? That's a logical question. And it would be a system of justice, something that's never really been tried. And what would be the elements? I had to make up a definition for the word justice, since there's no legal definition for it, which I didn't know until 1994. But I had already made up one. Basically, I called it balance between people, but then I had to put some flesh on those bones, because balance between people is not descriptive enough. So it's two elements theoretically, in the establishment of justice, in order to know when you really got it. That is element number one. No person is supposed to be mistreated, whether they're white or non-white. That's element number one if you're going to have justice. You can't have anybody being mistreated and you got justice. That doesn't compute. Doesn't even make sense. And number two, the person who needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Just those two simple elements, and you'll have justice. Okay. But you don't have justice anywhere on the planet. And you cannot have justice as long as you have the system of white supremacists.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, I'm going to shift a little bit. Callers, I want you to stay right there, because I want to get your take on this also. This comes out of somewhere close to me. I'm broadcasting out of Columbus, Ohio, so this comes close. This is Elyria, Ohio. It says an Ohio appeals court has upheld a judge's order that a deadbeat father cannot have more kids until he pays his back child support. The decision this week by the 9th District Court of Appeals didn't provide an opinion whether the judge's order was appropriate. Instead, the appeals court said it didn't have enough information to decide the merits of the case. But what they're saying was that this guy named Azam Taylor, who is a black male, clearly a black male, he said that Taylor couldn't have more children while he's on probation for 5 years. The judge said the order will be lifted if Taylor pays nearly $100,000 in overdue support for his 4 children. Now, the Taylor's attorney is arguing the fact that this order violates his right to reproduce. In essence, Mr. Fuller, we're looking at this whole sterilization piece that we saw begin to start creeping back in through the legal system. Now, you're telling a person he doesn't have a right to procreate for the next 5 years until he pays off his fine. Mr. Fuller, let me get your thoughts on this.
Under the system of white supremacy and according to compensatory counter-racist science, any babies that the non-white people of this planet have come under the system of white supremacy, which means the illegitimate fathers and the illegitimate mothers are the dominant factors in these babies being born. Now, what do I mean by the illegitimate fathers and the illegitimate mothers? Who are these people? They are the racists themselves. Why? Because they took custody of the fate, the destiny of the black people of this planet. They wrote that in their own history books, and it's still there, and they are still in charge. That's what white supremacy means. So if you're supreme over an entire people, whatever babies those people produce, that's your responsibility. I'm going to repeat that. The white people of this planet who believe in white supremacy and those who are practicing white supremacy, even as we speak, they are the illegitimate mothers and the illegitimate fathers. Since they took these people illegally, I mean, the black people of this planet, they dominate them, all of them. There's none of them who are on their own and have their own economy and all like that. Not a black person on this planet. Nowhere, including all over Africa and Madagascar or wherever, Brazil, New York City, Oakland, California, Albany, Georgia. If you're black and you're on this planet, your illegitimate mothers and your illegitimate fathers are white people who believe in white supremacy. And they run all of your business. You don't run any of it. So when you have a baby, they are the fathers and the mothers of those babies. We have the titles. Oh, yes, we can reproduce and all like that. But when it comes to the economics, when it comes to the education, when it comes to anything, we are totally helpless because we are babies who are having babies. A black person who is 30 years old, who produces an offspring anywhere on this planet, is a child himself or herself. Why? Because they have been denied the ability to help themselves. When you can't help yourself, you are a child. That's why the white supremacists call black people boys and girls. They slip up every now and then, even in 2014, and say that. Oh, that boy, excuse me, that man. But that's not a man. A man is a manager. He can manage his own affairs. He's been groomed and put in a position where he can till the soil and build a factory and do all of this. He doesn't have to beg anybody for anything. The white supremacists don't beg. They do. They're in charge.
So what you're saying to me, Mr. Fuller, and I want to be clear about this, are you saying that black people, that whites, it is okay for a white supremacist or a white man to tell a black man when and where he can reproduce or when and where he can procreate? Is that what you're saying?
It's not okay, but they have always done this anyway. Ever since the beginning of white supremacy, we have to understand the awesome power of the white supremacists. They are in charge of all the black people on the planet. We don't have jobs unless they say so. We know that. We know that ourselves right here in the Northwestern Hemisphere. You think you're going to get a job and the white supremacists don't have anything to do with it? Well, go out and try getting one and see who you will be talking to, either directly or indirectly, even if you have the black faces up front, which is where you have them now in this modern age, all over the planet. Oh, yes, the person behind the desk may be a black person, and they may talk in a gruff and authoritative voice, and they might say, well, I don't know, I'll examine it and I'll look into it, and he'll sound all official rather. And in the case of a black lady, she may sound like she's really in charge. They're not in charge of themselves. It's the white supremacists who tell them what to do. So don't get upset with them when you go into the office and you don't get a job and it's a black person that turns you down. It's not the black person who's turning you down. They can't turn themselves down or up or out or anything. You know, they don't even know if they'll have a job tomorrow. Why? Because the white supremacists are in charge of every job on this planet when it comes to non-white people.
Okay,
get that in your mind.
Let me open it up and get some of the callers' thoughts on this point, on this case out of Elyria. This could have profound impact on a number of things, especially in light of this whole degeneration that we're talking about and this emasculation of the black male, et cetera, et cetera. Callers, either one of you might want to weigh in on this. Go ahead.
Well, really quickly, child support itself it's a business. Think about it. You take in money from a person, $400 or $500, and you hold it for a day or two before releasing it to the custodial parent. You can earn interest. You can earn something on that money you hold for a day or two, and that's what the governments do. They use that as basically cash flow,
right?
And they care nothing about the child. It's only about the money flowing.
But this is a precedent-setting ruling. Here's an Ohio appeals court, and that upheld a judge's order that a deadbeat black father, they call them deadbeat, black father cannot have more children. They're saying you cannot procreate anymore. I mean, and they upheld the decision. That means that goes into law. That is a precedent-setting standard that will be used against black men all across the country, this area of the world, and the rest of the world. Let me get your thoughts from the second caller on this.
Yes, sir. That's just classic white supremacy to me. Margaret Sanger is probably staring from the grave, very happy, the mother of eugenics. That's what that sounds like to me. Some Nazi Germany, like Reverend Fuller said, when white supremacy controls you, they control your children and everything you do in area.
They even control your right to reproduce. Is what they're saying.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Brother Dale Jones, who passed on, but he had done a lecture about the American Nigger Factory, and kind of like in that movie The Matrix, and how in that one scene it was a bunch of babies in like this incubator thing, and how they was being farmed like crops, and I see that's how that American Nigger Factory, especially for black folks, work, and that's just part of the eugenics.
I mean, it's kind of interesting, Mr. Fuller, that all of this is rising at the same time. You got Sterling, you got the Boko thing, you've got Cliven Bundy, who came out 2 or 3 weeks ago and said, black people better off as slaves. And then you've got this judge right here in the state of Ohio saying to this black man, you can't procreate no more. You can't let your sperm touch that egg anymore. Until, in essence, you're not allowed to procreate for 5 years. I mean, that is precedent setting, Mr. Fuller. Let me get your thoughts, Mr. Fuller, again.
Well, it's not only another form of racist tyranny, but and it's just rubbing it in, because what they are saying is, you black people are my prisoners. You are my slaves. You have never gotten out of slavery because you're under the system of white supremacy. It's just more sophisticated now. It's just another form. Racism is a form of slavery. That's all it is. What is slavery? Slavery is mistreating people in a way and in a sophisticated form, if it's sophisticated slavery, that they don't know what to do about it. Slavery is nothing but a form of mistreatment. Subjugation and mistreatment. Domination, those two elements, and mistreatment. You dominate the person that you are mistreating. which means you dominate them in all of the areas of activity, including sex. And you also dominate them in the first area of activity, economics, how they use their time and energy. And in the second, education. So you tell a black person, you will announce to the world yourself that black schools are inferior, or that the education that black people are getting is an inferior education. Then you jump to labor, one of the areas of activity, and say, you're not educated, so therefore you can't work here. You don't have an education. Well, you don't have an education because you've already declared that the schools that you go to is inferior. You've already told the world that. So therefore, you got an inferior education. So when you come and look for a job, you're not qualified for the job. You can't go into the labor market because your education is inferior, which means by proxy, you're inferior in doing anything of constructive value. So now you're going to have a baby. Now watch this now. You're going to have another baby, and you're not going to have a job because I'm not hiring you on a job without an education. And I'm going to see to it you don't have an education because I never straighten out the school system. I've been arguing about the school system, about who's black and who's white and who will go to what school and how much money you'll pay to go to school to get a so-called education. All right? Now you're going to have a baby on top of it without my authorization? I don't think so. So what I'll do, since you can't sustain yourself and support yourself and your baby, then I'm going to see to it you can't have no babies. Now, how about them apples? And that's the correct thing for me to do, because I've cut you off from all resources where you can justify having a baby. Not only that, when it comes right down to it, as you get huffy about it, you can't even justify your existence, because you're not supposed to be walking around on my planet with no education, don't have no job, and I'm not going to give you one, and I'm not going to allow you to make one for yourself. And you think you're going to have a baby on my planet, on my watch? No, I'm going to have to tailor, because that's what they're doing now. I call it racial population tailoring confusion. I've been calling it that for years. That's one of their 6 strategies. So they are tailoring the populations of the non-white people, because they're forcing them into an economic situation where they can only have so many babies. The white supremacists are correct about that. There are some people who run around in, I recently read something about some people in the Amazon, I believe, in what they call the jungle. I call it the forest. Mm-hmm. But they have babies all over the place, just one right after another. And some of them die of what you call disease or natural causes and all like that.
Right.
But the females keep having them. But what do they have? Because the white supremacists allow them to have it, by the way. They too are under white supremacy. But on account of their primitive conditions, and that goes back thousands of years, and that's all they are used to, they can have unlimited babies because they're all going to be self-sustaining. That's the key. We're in an environment where the white supremacists will tell us, get an education and get a job, then they'll seal off the means by which you get either. And if a few black people seem to really want to get educated and don't give up on it, then what have they been doing in the last 15 or 20 years? They've been going up on what? The price of getting the education, knowing full well that your grandmother ain't got that kind of money, because that's who you're going to be dependent on. You're just out of high school. You're going to depend on your grandmother, your mother, your sister, and your father who's looking for a job and gave up on it because he can't get one. So now you get into a school and the tuition just keeps going up and up and up and up. When here in the Northwestern Hemisphere, there were a lot of black people who had dishwashing jobs but went to college. They were Pullman Porter's children who went to college. They weren't making a fortune, but they could at least get in some type of college. The white supremacists looked at that, say, we're getting too many educated black people here. How do we stop them from getting an education? Go up on the tuition. hey, that's a no-brainer. We'll tell them in order to get, even walk in this classroom, I mean, hey, you got to be talking about at least $10,000 just to walk in there and sit down. You haven't even been taught anything yet. But just to walk in and sit down, that's $10,000 right off the top. You black people, have you got it? Has your grandmother got it? She's scraping together her little change and pennies and got her little coins in the handkerchief that she's been saving from that maid job till she got bad feet and whatnot, and that hospital job she had. I mean, now she can't help you. Nobody can help you because we got it rigged so nobody can help you. So now you got to drop out.
Wow. And
look for a job. And we don't have a job for you because you don't have an education. See how they got that thing rigged? I'm telling you, these people are the shrewdest people that the world has ever seen.
Mr. Fuller, we've got
the people of the Roman Empire would be applauding, saying, boy, hey,
right.
They outdid us.
Mr. Fuller, we've got about 5 minutes. I want to get your thoughts on, is there anything that outside of, because I think you brought up 3 or 4 key things, and I brought that one up just to show which way all this stuff is trending. Any more key thoughts that you wanted to give to us before the show closes, Mr. Fuller? I just want to use to wrap up this whole thing with everything that's going on now. For years, I've been saying, because you're supposed to codify what you say. I'm just saying, okay, the first thing you do is blame the white supremacists for everything that is going on that shouldn't be happening to non-white people. And you can say it like this: many people are being harmed who should not be harmed. Many people are to blame. The people who are most to blame are hiding in plain sight. If you want to know where they are, they're hiding right in plain sight. You're looking at them, a lot of them. The people who are most to blame are all white supremacists. They're the usual suspects. Now, what should we do? That's what you should say. We should be in the process of codifying everything that we say and everything that we do so that we can replace this tacky, trashy, and terroristic system that we have, because that's what the system of white supremacy is. And it has made black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere such people that we don't have quality relationships. All of our relationships are tacky, trashy, and terroristic. All of them. And they don't get any better than tacky. And when we interact with each other and when we interact with white people, it's all tacky, trashy, and terroristic. It's going to be one of the three, or all three, because they got it rigged so that it can't be anything else but that. And so we got to get a quality relationship so that we can become the universal man and the universal woman that we all should be, both white and non-white. That's what we should be aiming for. Get rid of this system of white supremacy, replace it with justice, get a quality relationship, and try to evolve into people who have the characteristics of universal man and universal woman. And we don't know what that is yet. That's a huge question mark. But we can't keep being the type of people that we are right now, both white people and non-white people. We are tacky, we are trashy, and we are terroristic. And that's the truth. Tacky, trashy, terroristic, the 3 T's. That's the kind of people we are on this planet, on account of this rotten system called the system of white supremacy. We need a system of justice. That's the closing line. Okay, Mr. Fuller, I want to take a piece from Mr. Fuller's book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. Mr. Fuller, on the back of it, he says several things, but one is striking me this morning as we close out. He says, racism has done more to promote non-justice than any other socio-material system known to have been produced or supported by the people of the known universe. This is from the book, The United Independent Compensatory Concept. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you get a copy of this definitive work as you grow in your understanding. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, and thank you, callers.
Thank you.